The yeas are 311. The nays are 114. Two-thirds voting in the affirmative, the resolution is adopted. The clerk will notify the governor of the state of New York of the action of the House. The chair announces to the House that in light of the expulsion of the gentleman from New York, Mr. Santos, the whole number of the House is now 434.
And with that, one of these stranger chapters in American history comes to a close. After the House voted to expel disgraced Congressman George Santos, he is now the sixth member of Congress to be thrown out. Republican leadership stood behind the criminally indicted now ex-congressman who is facing 23 federal counts, including wire fraud and money laundering. Both House Speaker Mike Johnson and Majority Leader Steve Scalise voted against expelling Santos, as did most of the rest of Republican leadership. Santos had survived two previous attempts to oust him. The vacant seat will now be filled in a special election. The Republicans' slim margin of control could shrink to just 3 seats. While they're already changing the locks on his office, it wouldn't be a George Santos story if it didn't end with more fraud before he left. Just before the vote to expel, GOP Congressman Max Miller sent a letter to his colleagues writing that Santos's campaign, quote, had charged my personal credit card and the personal card of my mother for contribution amounts that exceeded FEC limits. Neither my mother nor I approved those charges or were aware of them. Joining our conversation, Congressman Robert Garcia of California, who led the charge to expel George Santos. Michael Steele is here as well. Congressman, you have been beating this drum for months now. You introduced the resolution to expel Santos on Tuesday. It is finally over. How do you feel?
Well, honestly, I'm really proud of the U.S. House. I think this is an important moment for both Democrats and Republicans to do the right thing. It also tells me that this can be a place about truth and about justice. I'm, really heartened by how many Republicans actually joined our efforts to ensure that we got rid of someone that has no business being in Congress. Remember, 9 months ago, when we first brought forward that first expulsion resolution, there were a few people that were supporting us, and we pushed it really hard. We got them and forced, at the time, Kevin McCarthy to do the ethics investigation. We hounded that committee to ensure that there would be a report published sooner rather than later. And then that report, of course, then really drove this bipartisan vote to get it done. And so certainly it is a solemn day. It's not, no one's here because we want to expel members of the House, but he had no business. His lies and his cons are over.
Right, Congressman, because as much as we were talking about George Santos, we are talking about the institution. You used two words I want to pick up on that you used in your floor speech. Truth and justice are crucial components of a healthy and strong democracy. It speaks to the public trust we hold and the dignity of this institution. Talk to me, if you will, about the impact of the Santos episode on Congress.
Well, I think part of it also stems from what George Santos represents. There's a direct connection, I believe, between the election of Donald Trump, his attack on our institutions, his lies, the way that he has debased our very system of government, and for someone like George Santos to be allowed to be in Congress and to serve. And so a lot of us are here, and me in particular, I'm here because I want to ensure that we have a democracy to protect. We're here to ensure that truth, that justice, that integrity actually matters in the House of Representatives and in government. And so George Santos was the opposite of that. He's this creation of this new extreme far-right MAGA movement that is focused on lies and not telling the truth and trying to really put our institutions backwards. In some cases, try to destroy what we very know as our democracy. And so taking on George Santos was really important, I think, for the House. I am very disappointed that the Speaker and the Republican leadership chose to vote against his expulsion, yet so many of their members actually went forward and did the right thing. I think that says a lot about his leadership, his moral center, and how he's going to govern the House in the future.
Right, Michael, so I want you to pick up on this point, both your sense of why several Republicans finally came around on this and why there was this fissure between membership and leadership.
I don't know if there was so much of a fissure as sort of a reality check that you couldn't hold the numbers. I think if they could hold the numbers, George Santos would still be there in the Congress. I mean, because why? Because up to that point, they were able to hold the numbers. There were no serious efforts to get rid of him before now, and I appreciate the congressman's leadership in sort of holding the mirror up to the House and saying, this is what we look like with this guy here. Are you prepared to take that, carry that forward in furthering weakening the institution of the Congress. And I thought that was a very powerful argument for the congressman to make. But the reality on the Republican side was they didn't give a rat's patoot about any of that. It wasn't about the institution. It was about how they control the House and how long they could control it in that one seat, particularly given the one vote that he represents. As you said at the beginning, Alicia, now the numbers could shrink to a 3-seat majority in the House. So the politics was more animating here than any call to conscience about George Santos. I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert are still in the House, folks.
Well, let me pick up on that point, Michael.
The stripe has changed.
Let me pick up on that point because I've only got about a minute left, and I want to bring in the congressman before we go. Congressman, what does it say that they held Santos responsible? When will they do the same for their colleagues who were instrumental in an attempted coup?
I mean, I think that's absolutely right. I mean, obviously, George Santos is emblematic of the real cancer that's in the far-right Republican Party right now. But there's so much more work to do. And there's so much work in this House, particularly for our party, for my party, to stand up and stand for democracy every single time. We cannot allow folks like Marjorie Taylor Greene, like Lauren Boebert, like Matt Gaetz, lie, cheat, try to steal an election. And it's up to us to stand up every single time and call them out. I think this hopefully is also a direct call to everyone in this body to remember that honesty counts, integrity counts, and we've got an eye on everyone, making sure that we're going to do everything we can to keep the integrity here, not just here, but of course all across government.